and willing to come dive with us. So I really appreciate you coming and doing this. This is super, super special. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah,
First of all, can everybody hear me okay? There's a lot of background noise. If you need to speak up, just say so. But thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. Really honored to speak to you all. And props to David, because I really admire your leadership for building a local community, having these meetings, keeping people active. It's great. You don't see that. You don't see that very often. So props to you. So happy to be here. So a little background on myself. As I said a minute ago, I began diving with the Woodville Karst Plain Project in 1996. My current role is I would call mid-distance RB80 dives, so that's like less than 10 grand. So either set up, clean up, whatever needs to be done, cave radio locators, survey data, whatever. But I'm usually between 10,000 and the door, not much further than that. I am on the board of directors. The WKPP is a 501c3 organization, non-for-profit organization. I'm the treasurer. Not that there's big finances with the team, but I take care of the annual IRS and state of Florida filings to make sure we maintain that tax-free status. The picture on the right there is that's what safeties look like when they come out of the cave after being in there for about a year or two. That's probably 2 years. So those things are just nasty. Obviously, they're usually what we can do is rebuild the second stage, rebuild the first stage, rebuild the valve. Everything else is trash. But you know, to safely dive these caves, you gotta pave the way with safety. So, for example, in McCullough Springs, about every 2,000 or 3,000 feet, there's a depot of safeties. You know, maybe a three pack of safeties there. Never had to use one, but you know, if you're running short on gas or your rebreather fails and you need more gas to get home, they're there. And then when we certainly don't do any exploration without setting the whole cave up with safeties before any real long dives. So the reasons I joined in 1996, I'd been a certified cave diver for about 2.5 or 3 years at that time. So for me, fundamentally, it came down to three things. One is I believed in the cause. So the exploration, the conservation, because we do, you know, this is some cool dives to be sure, but we do this all for a purpose. For getting data, for surveying, for helping out the state geologist, and we get data that then can give to the state. And you know, a couple things that were big impacts from the work we did is, well, on a small scale, in the late 90s, this guy wanted to build a big gas station, and convenience store on this corner, south of Tallahassee, and we were like, here's the survey data. The cave runs right underneath the gas station, so you don't want to build a gas station right over the aquifer. And the county basically denied his permit. On a bigger scale, though, once we did all the dye tracing tests to show that in Tallahassee, the way they treat the water is they treat it at a water plant on the southwest side of the city near the airport, and then they pump it about 15 miles east across the county into the spray field, and they spray it in these agricultural fields. So they treat it to a certain level of purity, but it's still got some nitrates. It's probably not drinkable, but it's treated to several, whatever standard. Pipe it over the spray field, and they spray it in this big field. And they thought, we're being really environmentally conscious because we're saving the water and we're letting the farmers irrigate the fields, and it's got mild fertilizer, and everybody's happy, until we did the dye tracing that showed the dye trace that you put in there within 40 days ends up in McCullough Springs. And that then forced, the state had the smoking gun to force the city of Tallahassee to spend about $300,000 in infrastructure improvements to improve the quality of the water. So that's just a couple examples of some of the impact we've had. But believe in the cause. Second one was a big one for me. I wanted to learn from the best. I'm a big believer that you should dive. I think you should dive with people you're going to learn from, or people you think are better than you. I think that's really important. I've always tried to keep that top of mind as I've dove, and I think I've improved my skills as a result. And you also got to, I'm going to age myself here, but this is 1996. So, this is before GUE. This is before Halcyon. This was, the internet was just taking off. There was some email lists. So there was not a lot of good educational information out there. So if you wanted to learn, you kind of had to show up and see what people were doing, how they rigged their gear, learning about decompression procedures. So that was another big motivation for me. And then I figured if I did the first two really well, then I get the opportunity to see some cool stuff. And I've been involved in the team for 20 some years, and you see people come and go for various reasons, but one common theme is there's a lot of people motivated to join the team who are really driven by point number 3, and they typically kind of burn out after a while, don't last really long. So anyway, so what brought us to Orange County? My job brought us to Orange County in April of 2004. I appreciate the wonderful warm welcome I've gotten from the local diving community. I'm primarily a cave diver. That's really most of my diving. I've done a fair amount of wreck diving in the Great Lakes, Lake Huron, Lake Superior. Just was there 3 weeks ago. But I will admit I'm a novice. I consider myself a novice ocean diver. Anybody witness my surf entries will agree with that. I've got a lot to learn diving out here. And then I also serve on the GUE Quality Control Board. It's my second term. Panos asked me to join that back in May. Fortunately, there's not much to do because everybody's doing a great job, but I'm on the board. All right, this is some funny history here. Before there was GUE, these are my certification cards, and there's just some original gangster names there with Tom Mountain, Brett Gilliam, my first.
Coolest slide ever.
my first nitrox class was taught by Tom Mount and Brett Gilliam at this dive shop I was affiliated with in Cincinnati, Ohio. Tom Mount, of course, was the founder of INTD. Brett Gilliam was the founder of TDI. They've written books back in the day. And then, I was lucky enough, my roommate from business school said, hey, for the long 4th of July weekend, let's go drive down to this place in Florida called Ginny Springs. We can take cavern and intro to cave. You don't have to buy all this special gear. We can use our open water gear. You need to buy some lights and stuff, but it's not very equipment intensive. Let's go do it. So I'm thinking, okay, it's a 4-day weekend, if I don't like it, I learn something, and if I like it, great. Anyway, I got hooked, and so within a few months, I signed up for full cave, which is sort of the equivalent of Cave 2 in GUE terminology. So that's my NSS cave card there on the right. And then a couple years later, I went down and took Trimex, my Trimex class with Jared.
Some nobody named Jared.
Yeah. So and I was, and that's how I stumbled into the WKPP. Honestly, it's because Jared was my instructor, and he, vouched for my skill and skill in the water, and said, yeah, why don't you come on down and get involved? So life takes many twists and turns. Okay, what is the Woodville Karst Plain? It is a very unique geological area. It's about 450 square miles south of Tallahassee. That little box there on the map. It starts just on the south side of Florida and goes to the Gulf of Mexico. There's a number of cave systems in the Woodville Karst Plain that you may have heard of. The biggest one, obviously, is the Leon McCullough system. That's the longest underwater cave in North America. I think the number of surveyed feet is about 300,000 surveyed feet. And it was the two were connected together in July of 2007. It was a very famous dive. Before then, you had the Leon Sink system, which has sinkholes that you may have heard these names of. Sullivan, furthest one upstream is Sullivan, furthest one downstream is Turner. In between, you have Emerald, Sherald, Clear Cut, Innisfree, Whiskey Still, Promise Go Between, River Sink. Some of the names maybe you've heard or read about. That's the whole Leon Sink system that was connected into Wakulla. Then you also have Chips Hole is a very interesting cave. It's just a howling siphon. It's rare in that it's a siphon, not a spring. So makes for really interesting logistics in planning the dives because the current pulls you in, and then when you turn around, you're facing some pretty strong flow. on the way out. That map is a little out of date. I can tell you Chip's Hole is this close to being connected into downstream Turner. Like super, super close. And that's been a big focus of the spring and the summer. Other systems you may hear, Indian Springs, that's a former YMCA property. Sally Ward is also on the Wakulla Springs property. By looking at the map, you'd think they'd be connected together. They're only separated linearly by about a mile. Numerous dives have been downstream Sally Ward, and it just ends up in even guys in Sidemount haven't found the way on. So certainly the water connects, but there's no physical connection. So those are some of the popular systems. Shepherd is kind of more to the southeast on that map in the St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge. This spring we found Going Passage and put in another 3,000 feet of line. 10 or 15 years ago, people wrote that cave off thinking it was all done. So still lots of work to do. The beautiful picture there on the left, that's the cavern of Wakulla Springs on a really good day. You can see the diver there for reference of how huge it is. It's from the floor to the ledge is about 100 feet. Obviously that's a day with 200-foot visibility, and unfortunately there's not many days like that anymore. But that's what we're working on. Hey Keith, have a seat.
Welcome, Keith.
So this is a statement of purpose, which is right off the website. I talked about this. It's mainly exploration, conservation, research, work in very close partnership with a lot of state and federal agencies. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the permits to dive on the sites because they're mainly on either state or federal forest land. Some of the notable contributions or accomplishments: over 34 miles explored and mapped. Average depth is about 285 in Wakulla, about 220 in the Leon Sink system. I talked about the connection of Leon Sinks in Wakulla. Since 2003, we've worked very closely with the Department of Environmental Protection and the Florida Geological Survey to install. And later on in my presentation, I walked through a series of photos walking through a dive where we did a repair job with one of these meters. But it's a series of meters in strategic locations in the cave that measure temperature, flow rate, salinity, and other basic water quality measurements, and they're attached to a cable that runs through the ceiling. So the geologists have, for the first time, real-time data 24/7 at major intersections of the cave, and I'll explain this later in the presentation. And it gives them really good understanding in real time of how the water's moving and where the points of pollution are, etc. So it's been an ongoing project because those meters need maintenance, need to be replaced every once in a while. I think, going back to the late 90s, early 2000, there was, no problem. There was, I think, a number of contributions around equipment innovation. Again, you got to kind of put yourself in the mindset of, this is pre-Halcyon, or actually Halcyon, I think, sort of formed because they saw the market opportunity to manufacture this gear. But what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention. So, the dives were getting complex enough, and there wasn't available equipment off the shelf, if you will. So a lot of smart guys on the team, or people who had access to machine shop, basically made the equipment. So some examples of that are scooters. So initially, they were using the original Tecna or Mako scooters, but when you take them deep, they were crushing the water pressure was crushing the bulkheads. So then they thought, well, okay, I got a solution for that. So they attached a port onto the housing of the scooter and basically bungeed a 6 cubic foot argon bottle to it. And they're like, well, in a little regulator to equalize the pressure. Well, that prevented the bulkheads from crushing, but the internal pressure squeezed the battery and shorted out the plates, the lead acid battery. So the battery fried out in no time. So that led to the Gavin scooter that Bill Gavin invented. And that served us well for a long time. And then, I think it's now obsolete, obviously, but for years that was the state of the art scooter. A lot of innovation on lights because we needed more burn time. Or a real simple example is the Scout light that everybody takes for granted that you can buy from Halcyon. You couldn't buy these back in 2000. And everybody wanted a simple 3-cell light where the bulb matched the voltage of the battery and a simple twist-on bezel. And so, one guy in his machine shop basically lathed it out of Delrin and drilled a hole. And this is generation 1 of the Scout light. So, simple example. The RB80 was designed basically to die for color springs in Leon sinks. And then one of the things, a very simple example, but I think pretty innovative recently, is as we shifted from the Gavin scooters to the SUX units, which are much more powerful, and then we have the big frame of the RB80, and we're towing a scooter, and we're towing some extra stages. We're finding that after long dives, our lower backs really hurt, really badly, and then we started thinking about the physics of it, and this is your head. What was happening is, trim is, so-so, and you're riding a scooter, get the rebreather, so your head's got to be a little bit higher to get the rebreather to work. And you've got all this drag force pushing this way from the rebreather and the stagers, and you've got a force this direction from the pole of the scooter, and it was just creating a moment around your lower back. And so this is generation 1. There's another type, but it's in my gear in Florida. But it's a scooter harness that your legs go through here. Your harness from your back plate, the buckle goes through here like it normally would. Crotch strap goes through here. But the scooter is towed from this D-ring, and so it's pulling you from like your hips instead of putting pressure on your lower back. And that was a big game changer because now we're not getting at it. I remember one dive in Turner where Casey McKinley's back was so sore. He was sitting in his truck and people had to take his dry suit off for him. His back hurt so much. So,
do you mind if I interrupt
or
ask a question? So do you notice a huge difference between the RB80 manifold and just normal back-mounted 130s when you're getting pulled by the scooter? Because
not bad. It's not bad. It's just wider profile. But it's then when you attach, you're towing 2 scooters and you got a 3-pack of
it's the whole weight of everything.
That's a lot of drag. I think the team's made a number of contributions to just practical application of decompression because there's I think still to this point, and certainly back up until 10 years ago or so, I think anybody was doing these kind of exposures and decompressing in open water and getting out of the water and being fine. And not having issues. So, and just for fun, I brought copies of my Wakula tables here. I'll pass them around if you want to look at them. There's also VPM tables if you're feeling really lucky. It stands for Variable Permeability Model. It's a very different type of decompression algorithm, but I can't understand it, so I don't use it. Complex dive planning. Obviously everything we do is very much centered around a team approach. I think that's very consistent with the GUE ethos. But when I say complex dive planning, is most of these dives have an objective. They have a goal, and they're almost all the sites are special permit. So you have a certain number of days that you can get access to the site, notwithstanding that the window of good diving conditions gets narrower and narrower every year. So when you get access to the site and the conditions are good, you got to make sure whatever needs to get done, you get it done. And that doesn't mean you take risks on the dive, but rather you think through what are all the possible contingencies and that you plan for it so that no matter what, you can get the job done. And then there's been, the state of Florida, the government, the governor, and the legislature has done some resolutions and letters of commendation, which has been good recognition for the team. So, famous last words. This is my joke slide here. It clears up once you pass through the restrictions. So you can see, visibility of this. I think this is Sullivan Sink. which is the furthest upstream sink in the Leon sink system, and usually the first to clear. So you can see the water's pretty nasty. So this is my dive partner, John Rose. I think we're getting last minute instructions from Todd Kincaid there on the surface, and I looked in my logbook because I forgot about this dive, and we were doing a dive upstream of Sullivan Sink to place a cave radio locator. So it's a circular thing with a big magnetic coil in it, and you set it on the floor at a point where you agree. It's usually a major intersection on the survey. And you connect a light battery to it, turn it on, and then head out. And then there's people who wander around on the surface with looks like a metal detector, and they hear the signal, and then you can verify from the surface with a GPS signal, and it allows you to true up the survey on the map. So that was the purpose of this dive. We were putting a cave radio locator, but you can see the conditions there were pretty lousy, and what I wrote down in my logbook is it was a sewer until 70 feet, and then it kind of cleared up. But that's some of the conditions aren't so great. I wanted to show a couple videos first. The first video is from a dive just a few months ago in June in the spring tunnel that's upstream of Turner. So Turner Sink is the furthest sink downstream in the whole Leon Sink system. We motored upstream about 6,000, 7,000 feet, and then there's a big T. And to the left goes to Innisfree Sink. To the right is this big spring tunnel, and so we wanted to get really good high-resolution video of it. So there's two of us lighting, and one guy, doing the video behind us. And I'm the guy on the left. Dive partner's on the right. And you'll see some of us stop every once in a while because ideally when you're lighting the tunnel you want to stay even so that you're lighting up the whole tunnel. But if it starts to narrow down and you have to go single file, you go single file, then you go back hard. So in any case, here goes. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the music, but the music's not so good anyway. It's about 6 minutes long.
Remember to bring a speaker next time.
Depth here is between 220 and 240, and look for there's just big snow drifts of silt. So you'll see us riding pretty high on the ceiling because it's very silty. So this is classic Leon sinks with the white scallop walls. You can see, we're both towing scooters because we're that far from the door that if you have a problem with the scooter, you want to make sure you got lots of backup. One thing I wanted to point out is my partner on the right. His name's John Rose. If you look, you can see where he clipped off his tow scooter is kind of on one of his butt D-rings. And I clipped mine off on my main scooter ring and then just kind of shoved it underneath my leg. His method is much better because you can see mine, it's got a longer leash so it swings around too much. Where his rides a lot more smoothly.
He just has a nose clip?
Yeah, he just clipped it to a D-ring on the back of his tank there. Just rides a lot better, I think. One other thing I wanted to point out that we do that I think is a really good idea is, notice that we have a third MOD sticker on our stage bottles at the bottom. So when you're single file or you're scootering, you know exactly what bottle the person's breathing, or in this case is plugged into the RD80. So that's a change that was made, 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it'd be a really good idea for folks out here to do as well.
It's a great idea. Surprised you don't see it more often, to be honest with you.
I mean, there's still the MOD, you still have the MOD things on the side of the tank.
Yeah.
But, one on the bottom, too, is, I think, a really good idea.
Why is it red on the blonde? Is that lighting?
It's part of the color correction, but also it's just this brownish brownish like silt, or I don't know what the mineral is. I don't know if that's girthite or. But part of it could be the lighting and the color correction of the video, or running it through this, this projector. But you go through this little narrow section at. Pardon me.
Is that? I think I asked you this when you and I were hanging out there. But does it get? Does that level of sediment get deep? It doesn't because of the flow, right?
Well, it's
eventually you go stick your arm through the silt on the
yeah.
bottom.
Well, it's silty because there's not a lot of flow here. And you can see all the rocks are covered with silt, and some of the crop wash, even though you're 3 feet away from it, kicks up little rooster tails of silt. That's why we're trying to ride really high. Later on, you'll see, like, look at the floor. You could stick your hand up to your shoulder and it's still there.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's just big snowdrifts of silt.
It was a surreal experience.
The water's clearer than I thought it
Yeah, well, it's a spring tunnel. Yeah, it's a spring tunnel, so the water's real blue. And then this is real, classic Leon sinks with the white walls and big rooms, and then you go through a little, narrow section, and it opens up again. So it's really, really nice ride.
This was to place the coil, or this wasn't to place the coil, right? Separate dive.
No, separate dive. Yeah, no. This was just a few months ago. So the purpose was just to get the video.
Wow, that's a big room.
Yeah, big room, blue water.
Stupid question, but there's a main line that's permanently in there. Or
Yeah. From time to time you'll see the line. I think in this section it's way to the left in a line trap. But there's times where you'll be able to see the line here in the video.
This is a cave you know pretty well. When you're cruising through here, do you know where you are?
Yeah, and we did the dive. John and I did the dive ourselves the day before to make sure there was continuity in the line. And then the next day, Chris showed up with the video gear, and we just said, "Follow us." Yeah, because we didn't want to go out there with video gear, and if the line was broken, because from time to time the line breaks, and you got to patch it.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that'd be super.
So there's the line you can see there, Walter.
Yeah.
I would think you're fixing the line all the time while you're in there, right?
Yeah, remarkably, it stays in pretty good shape. But yeah, there's times where it breaks or it's in the sediment, the sand.
I was watching or reading one of the KUR updates recently where they talked about the flow changing directions and just shredding all the line that's in there.
Oh, really? Wow.
Then they had come back and it was like they spent their whole dive coming back. They were excited to do some bush work and they ended up spending the whole dive fixing all these lines because they were just all over the place. And you're swimming into the cave and all of a sudden the line's empty in your hand.
Let's pay more.
The guys are diving at week watching. Karst underwater fishing. So is that not very common for the flow to change direction like that? Is that?
I've never seen it. Unless there's so much rain that the creeks are flowing into the sinkholes, which it wouldn't be diveable.
I'll have to look that up and send it to you.
So the other video I have is, since I know some of us are starting to, or some of you guys cave dive, and some are you've done cave 1 or cave 2. You can't rite of passage of cave diving is diving at Ginny Springs. So there's another video here that we did in May of this year in Ginny Springs, and I just wanted to include it because it's not in the Woodville Karst Plain, but since so many people either have been there or going to go there. I'd never seen this cave with so many lights in it. So the purpose of the dive was Casey McKinley, my dive buddy, had a new camera, and so he was trying to dial in the settings. So we're doing some test dives to confirm the settings of his camera. So this video put together is it's from 2 dives on consecutive days. So the first dive, so if you only see one diver in front, it's me, and he was videoing. That was the first day. Then the second day we had myself and John Rose lighting the walls, and David Ray was on the big double unit, and then Casey was filming. So each of us had these 15,000 lumen video lights. You'll see some sections in here where there's like 4 to 6 of these 15,000 lumen lights lighting up the whole cave. I've never seen the cave. Had informed us that the FTS, in their infinite wisdom, had filled these PVC legs with concrete. So I've got the worst poker face in the world. So you can see my expression is, what the F? Casey's like ready to blow a gasket, but he knows he needs the cooperation of FTS, so he's trying to keep it under control. And then Jared's always cool as a cucumber as always, and he's thinking, what's the big deal? Because he knows he doesn't have to carry one of those things. Casey and I are the ones towing him in. So anyway, I thought this was a really funny photo. So anyway, the dive plan was, the meter and D tunnel crapped out, and we need to go swap it out. So here we're in, we're just off the beach at McCullough Springs. You can see in the background here, my mouse doesn't work. You see the building in the background there, that's the lodge. It's a beautiful lodge. It was built in the 1930s. It's a hotel, there's a restaurant in there. This is just a beautiful state park. If you ever get there, highly encourage you to visit it. It's just a really special place.
What a great picture, man.
Yeah. And you can see the manatee.
That's awesome.
Manatee there, and that's Casey's youngest daughter there who's harassing him. But we're all geared up, we're ready to go. This was the point in the project where we were evaluating the SUX scooters. So Casey was test driving the SUX scooter. I've still got my Gavin with in this case, the 42 amp hour battery pack. And then there's a bunch of zip ties bungee to the body, which you'll see why we need those in a minute. So, the manatee was hung around for quite a while, and we'd come up and sniff our ankles. You can see, hanging off my scooter D-ring is the replacement meter, so I'll be towing that. So we go in on 190 gas, and then switch to the 300-foot dry bottle at depth.
I like the Camelback too on there.
Yeah, that's for drinking and hydration, because this dive was probably 9 or 10 hours long total runtime.
Wow.
Right. So typically we just have one last discussion to make sure everybody's in sync on the dive plan. In this case, I think we're waiting for David Ray to quit taking pictures so we can get going. You can see how strong the flow is. So the flow from the spring forms the WKPP River. You can see how my scooter is pulled downstream. That's all from just the flow of the water. And then you can see I've got the replacement meter there clipped off to me. So this is shot from there's a little tower where people jump off and splash into the water, and someone took a picture of this. This is from a different dive, but just for continuity purposes to string the story together, I took pictures from a couple dives. So this is me leaving on another dive similar. And when we leave the beach, we always have an open circuit support diver escorting us, because we descend on open circuit. So we have the 190 bottle, but it's plugged into the RB80, but we're breathing open circuit until we get to about 60 feet, and then we switch over to the rebreather and then stow the hose. So it's a good idea to have a safety diver just keeping an eye on things.
That's like the cover shot for your man card. That's like your entrance to the man cave. It has that picture on it, all the bottles.
Yeah. So you know the 300-foot stages. It's the mix is 1080, so they are perfectly neutral in the water. They have so much helium in them, they don't weigh anything. So when you clip them off and you get going, there's a little bit of drag, but they don't weigh anything. They just fold flat and ride in the slipstream.
Is that one on your right side? Sorry to interrupt again.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got two packs of 300s, so this was a setup dive. Probably mine on the right, mine on the left, and either Casey or Jared's on the right that I had to take into 6,500 or something like that.
Drop it
Probably
off.
this dive. All right, so off we go. All right, so this is, we're in the cavern. This is 200 feet in the cavern. You can still see a little bit of daylight there in the background. Kind of motoring through, and then this is leaving the there's a switch where we drop the 190 bottle and plug in the 300, and this is either right around there or we're about to switch. This was another meter replacement dive where it was back then we kept it in a milk crate because we thought we had to protect it, but we shortly gave up on that.
What year is this, sorry?
This is probably 2007. Probably.
Those are torpedoes you guys have there.
Yeah, the one I'm diving. It's the Gavin body. It's a 42 amp hour batteries. The two Genesis 42 amp hours. So it's fine in the water, but it's a monster out of the water.
It probably wasn't soon after that you guys switched over to SUX, right?
Yeah, SUX switch over was probably 2013-ish, 2014.
Oh, so even a little bit after this, okay.
Yeah. So this is leaving the 210 rock is where we drop the 190 bottles and switch to 300-foot gas. So this is shortly after that. This is typical A tunnel. So A tunnel is the main conduit. That's carrying all the drainage of Leon sinks and other places. So the visibility is usually the worst in A tunnel. So this day was maybe that looks like about 20 feet. And Todd Leonard's there. This is another dive. Todd Leonard's there behind me, and I don't know why he's so close to the floor. All right, so we're on station. This is the D tunnel meter. This is Casey and I, and we're doing the swap. So the yellow one is the old one that's gone kaput, and it's a pretty quick order to take that out. It involves just cutting the zip ties around the base, and there's a cable with a pin connector you pull out. And so we're doing that, and the two of us have done this a few times. So the work, it went pretty smooth, pretty fast. So there's we pulled out the yellow one on the floor. There's the old one. So we've disconnected that one. I've got the new one in my hand that we're putting in. You can see that black cable coming off the top of the stand there. That's the cable, the data cable that plugs into the top. You can see some trash pile there from when we originally towed them in the first time. Another milk crate. That's a buoyancy tube because we needed something to counteract the concrete in the legs. So the Halcyon guys rigged up this buoyancy tube with a power inflator, and that worked pretty well. And we just leave the stuff there. So we're putting it in, zip tying it down on the stand. So you can see, just working pretty well together on each side. You see there's a little plastic thing zip tied to the legs. Those are like microscope slides where they'll collect bacteria and stuff, and every once in a while they want us to pull those. You'll see we bring some tools with us. So the new meter has this the plug for the data and the power is it's got like 4 to 6 pins, and then so you got to match up the plug with the pins, and then it screws on. And there always is a dummy plug to prevent damage on the way in. But then when you get to 300 feet, there's that much pressure pushing a rubber plug onto the thing. So we learned the hard way that you got to bring in some channel locks and some pliers to pull that thing out because water pressure's pushing it down. The first time we did this, we didn't have any tools. It took us forever to remove the thing, and I was using the knife off my harness to like pry it off. So then we got smart and started bringing tools. Plus, we needed, on the rock there, some simple side cutters to cut the zip ties when you're taking off the old meter.
Who's on the right there?
That's Casey McKinley on the right, me on the left.
It's classic Casey with his light over his head.
Yeah. So these may be out of sequence, but still working away at it. Then we got it so you can see the cable's now plugged in. You see in the center part of the meter is where the plug goes in. Everything's good. As I like to say, it's Miller time to head out. Casey just needs a scooter and we're ready to go. So we were running way ahead of time, so we took a detour to the B tunnel. B tunnel's one of the major spring conduits in Wakulla Springs. So that's the B tunnel meter. It's sort of identical configuration and hardware. This just monster tunnel. It's about 50 feet high, and it just pumps pure spring water. It's amazing how much water comes out of there. On the right there, you can see that's bone debris. That's from a mastodon bone. So from a wider shot, all those brown rocks down there that look like rocks, that's actually bone debris field from mastodon. So this gives you an idea of just the size of B tunnel. It's pretty amazing, really high flow. You can see just how the walls are all carved out from thousands of years of moving water. All right, so then this is right at the entrance restriction coming out. And I think I passed around some of my tables. You have decompression stops starting at 190, 200, 180. So this is the stop at 180. I know, like lately, I've been reading a lot of stuff that DOE's putting out where there's deep stops. There's some good debate of whether or not they're useful. Some people think they do more harm than good. I can tell you for a dive like this with a 285-foot profile, I always did deep stops because if you get into the intermediate part of the deco, so say 150 to 70 feet, and if you start feeling not so good, you're screwed. You don't have any options. So I think deep stops. I think deep stops are really important, and done enough dives in Wakulla that you find a deco that works really well, and you get out of the water and you feel great. You feel great the next day, and so that worked pretty well. I'm going to do that next time. So I'm a fan of deep stops, even though I know it's currently being debated.
At some point, Terry, real quick, at some point, I feel like if you're doing a full saturation dive like this, that they're you would have to have some sort of consistency, even among people, because you guys are doing full saturation stuff. There has to be a limit there as to where you need to start decompressing and where so you're saying between that 70 and 150 or so area, is that something that would be hard for you to go back into the? It's almost impossible.
Or you go, okay, let's say I'm gonna go down another 20, 30 feet and work my way up. I guess you could. It's just then you're kind of off your tables. So what tables are you following at that point? So
that's crazy.
Anyway, I'm a fan of deep stops. Call me old school. All right, so this is we're decoing up the slope in the cavern. This is probably about 110 feet. Let's see, we stay together as a team. We haven't been visited by support divers yet because we still got all our junk with us. So it's a nice cavern. It's a very controlled environment. You just gradually go up the slope. This day the visibility is pretty nice. It's probably 80 feet visibility there because you can see the other side of the cavern. So just sort of hanging out. This was so the sport divers had come to fetch some of the gear because they took the old flow meter. They took used bottles and stuff like that. So it's nice to have good support crew.
How do you guys coordinate the rendezvous?
What we do is based on the tables, we say, the surface manager writes down when we leave the beach, and we say, all right, we're pretty sure this dive, we're planning on making a 90-minute bottom time. And then based on the tables and based on when we left, they can estimate when we're going to get at around 100 feet, and then they send support divers in.